Zimbabwe's former prime minister and longtime opposition leader, Morgan Tsvangirai, is mourned in Harare. Washington refocuses on the Russia probe after the latest indictments from special counsel Robert Mueller. And conservationists unveil a new weapon in the fight against elephant poachers. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. We begin in Zimbabwe, where mourners filled the Harare church on Sunday for a funeral service in memory of Morgan Tsvangirai, the late leader of Zimbabwe's main opposition party. Tsvangirai died in a South African hospital last week at 65 after a long battle with cancer. His funeral was attended by leading figures from his Movement for Democratic Change party, as well as the Speaker of Zimbabwe's parliament. President Emmerson Mnangagwa made a personal visit to Tsvangirai's home to convey his condolences. Tsvangirai's death has cast the opposition MDC party into unknown territory less than 6 months before elections. It will be the first election in Zimbabwe not to feature 93-year-old former President Robert Mugabe, with whom Tsvangirai had a long and bitter history. Dozens of Sudanese opposition activists arrested last month in a crackdown on protests against rising food prices are now free. The detainees, including some top opposition figures, were released on Sunday, 3 days after the U.S. Embassy in Khartoum voiced concern over the arrests and that many of them were being held in inhumane conditions. Sudanese authorities said on Sunday they would release more than 80 political prisoners from jails in Khartoum, a week after the nation appointed a new security chief. Many families celebrated in front of the jails on Sunday, with some chanting "Freedom, Freedom" and singing national songs. Those freed on Sunday included Fadala Burma Nasir and Sarah Nugdallah, senior leaders of Sudan's main opposition Umma party, and women's rights activist Amal Habani. All of them were arrested in January after protests about high prices and tough economic conditions that turned violent. Secondary schools in Africa have traditionally emphasized academic subjects like math and grammar. But there's a new trend emerging. Schools are incorporating curriculum to teach what are known as soft skills to help students succeed in the job market and in life. To see how it works, reporter Chika Udor visited schools in Rwanda and Senegal, and here's our report.
These public high school students are on a field trip across the street. They're asking local businesses in Kigali what it takes to get hired. In a few months, they'll be trying to join the workforce.
What I have to do in interview, I have first to introduce myself, name, age, and the second I have to mention my education level and even my background. When you are going at the interview process, you have to dress smart.
Back on campus, the students conduct mock job interviews. Many of them say this is their favorite class. It's all about soft skills needed to transition to work. Teachers equip students to become better communicators, problem solvers, and global citizens. With support from a U.S.-based educational organization, Rwanda incorporated the work readiness curriculum into all secondary schools. The aim is to close the unemployment gap, which stands at 13.2%. A local NGO called Akazi Kanozi, which means work well done in Kinyarwanda, was created to execute the program.
Students must work in groups. For example, a group of 4 students, 5 students, they interact, we give them role plays, we give them scenarios, they present. Those are, through presentations, they are acquiring communication skills.
It's an innovative curriculum that requires teachers to learn soft skills too. Here, Rwandan and Senegalese educators are learning how to be more engaging in the classroom. The Senegalese instructors will take what they've learned to rural communities in Senegal. This junior high school in the Thiès region outside of Dakar is one of the 250 schools selected to participate. The program began early this year. Today, Students are discussing values like honesty and sharing.
Local schools certainly have failed somewhere because we had some instructions, we know what geography is, we know what mathematics are, but we did not really have skills to face life and to make our own choices. This is what we miss.
At a nearby high school, students are excited about another new class. It's about financial literacy. The class is an investment for a better future. Chika Odua for VOA News in Thiès, Senegal.
Well, air travelers in Asia, Europe and North America enjoy many direct flights. African flyers, however, frequently have to get from point A to B by going to an intermediate location, which could be as far away as Paris or Dubai. Now, the African Union is working to make Africa's cities more accessible by air, as covered by VOA senior analyst Jeffrey Young.
While other continents take direct air flights for granted, it's different in Africa, where getting from here to there may take many hours or send you all the way to Europe or the Middle East to get to your African destination. This inefficiency has impacted both business and tourism, and because of that, the African Union is taking action. At a recent meeting in Ethiopia, the AU's leader, Rwandan President Paul Kagame, announced a new initiative to make Africa more accessible by air.
Today, we will launch the single African air transport market. This is a major step forward for transportation.
These international agreements are common in Europe, North America, and Asia, but so far, only 23 of the African Union's member states have agreed to this initiative, known by its initials, SAATM. Air transport officials say this AU effort to open up Africa's airspace takes place while the industry group Airports Council International reports that African airports in 2017 experienced a 13.3% increase in arrivals compared to the previous reporting period. But the industry says that much of that growth came from outside travel to Africa rather than within the continent. Via Skype from Nairobi, an analyst at KIPRA, the Kenya Institute for Public Policy Research and Analysis, Helen Osiolo, says a major hindrance has been a lack of legal groundwork enabling a pact such as the SAATM.
Many countries had not yet put in place the structures, the legal, the regulatory framework in place to make sure that they are able to have this free, like a liberalized air market.
KIPRA's Osiolo says that a major impediment to inter-African air travel is the protectionism countries frequently give to their state-owned airlines, putting up taxes and other means of discouraging competition, as well as airfares made far higher because of having to fly to a third point to reach a destination. AU Chairman Kagame used the Addis Ababa ribbon-cutting ceremony for the initiative to explain another reason for its importance, Africa's economic advancement.
To be able to form a single air transport market, which is very important for the overall development of our continent.
KIPRA analyst Osiolo sets forth the reasons why the African Union's air agreement would be an economic boost with wide benefits.
There's a recent study that has been done and has shown that in terms of 12 African countries, if they participate on this new agreement, making sure that their skies are open and free, we will be able to create about 150 million to 300 million jobs. And this is very important for Africa.
The KIPRA analyst says what's needed is commitment by the African states not yet party to the AU agreement, and that once the pact is in place, it may be as long as 5 years before the continent enjoys the better service and lower fares the pact's promoters promise will come. Jeffrey Young, VOA News.
Now, the shops of traders in Mogadishu's main market remain closed on Monday to protest the government's move to raise taxes. Somalia's central government imposed a 5% sales tax this month as part of efforts to win billions of dollars in international debt relief. The boycott started Sunday, leaving stalls in Mogadishu's sprawling Bakara market, a lifeline for the city and surrounding areas, closed for the day. Somalia's finance minister says domestic revenue was up to $141 million in 2017 from $110 million in 2016, and much more is needed before the government is self-sufficient, a key step towards accessing about $4.6 billion in international debt relief. But the moves have angered the country's most powerful businessmen, and Somalis say they are reluctant to pay up to an administration that many consider corrupt and inefficient. Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered during the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Now coming up, U.S. President Donald Trump claims personal vindication in the Russia investigation. But Democrats say not so fast. Stay with us. Well, Washington is refocused on the Russia probe after Special Counsel Robert Mueller's indictment of 13 Russians accused of mounting a massive social media trolling campaign to help Republican Donald Trump defeat Democrat Hillary Clinton in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. VOA's Michael Bowman reports President Trump unleashed a tweet storm claiming personal vindication and the Russia investigation, something Democrats and others strongly contest.
Friday's charges by the Justice Department put legal weight behind what multiple congressional committees, as well as the U.S. intelligence community, say Russian entities did before, during, and after the 2016 election.
The defendants allegedly conducted what they called information warfare against the United States, with the stated goal of spreading distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general.
President Trump pounced on Twitter, interpreting the charges as a reason to end investigations of possible collusion by elements of his campaign, writing, quote, "If it was the goal of Russia to create discord, disruption, and chaos within the U.S., then with all the committee hearings, investigations, and party hatred, they have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They are laughing their asses off in Moscow. Get smart, America."
There are two groups that have created chaos more than the Russians, and that's the Democrats and the mainstream media.
Trump also cast blame on his predecessor, saying Barack Obama, quote, was president, knew of the threat, and did nothing. And that, quote, the Russian hoax was that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia. It never did. Democrats are pushing back.
Just because this indictment has no mention of collusion or of knowing participation by Americans doesn't mean it isn't going to happen in the next indictment.
It's Bob Mueller's job to figure out what laws have been violated and who should go to jail as a result. In my view, the bar shouldn't be set so low that everything is fine unless you can go to jail for it.
Mueller's investigation is far from over, and Democrats contend that many questions with weighty legal implications remain on the table.
Was this in effect the Russians providing campaign assistance, in-kind help, a violation of any number of campaign finance laws? Did this violate other laws prohibiting foreign interference in our elections? And were there U.S. persons conspiring with them to do it? Were there false statements made to law enforcement in the course of investigating this?
The indictments did not seem to impress the Russian government. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov dismissed them as unsubstantiated blabber. Michael Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
Well, Moscow is dismissing U.S. charges against several Russian citizens and companies for meddling in the 2016 presidential election as blather. Speaking at the Munich Security Conference, which ended Sunday, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov questioned the evidence. The charges formed a tense backdrop to the gathering, which focused on growing threats to global security. Here's Henry Ridgwell.
Moscow's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov did not directly mention the U.S. indictments in his speech. Instead, he was challenged by a question from the audience.
$1.25 million a month of Russian taxpayers' money being spent in trying to influence the American election. Do you think that was? Do you see a good return on that investment?
Lavrov's reply was brief.
You know, I have no reaction at all because one can publish whatever one wants. We see how accusations, statements, allegations multiply. Until we see the facts, everything else is just blather. I beg your pardon for a not really diplomatic wording.
Thank you.
Lavrov claimed there was a Western campaign of Russophobia, but the evidence is overwhelming, say analysts.
And the fact is that now we have independent Russian media have named the Troll Factory accounts. Facebook and Twitter have confirmed the Troll Factory accounts on Facebook and Twitter. That is absolutely damning. There is no possible way you can say that that didn't happen. You now have the Department of Justice further confirming it.
U.S. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster said the United States has learned how to fight back.
The United States will expose and act against those who use cyberspace, social media, and other means to advance campaigns of disinformation, subversion, and espionage.
McMaster then focused on deteriorating security in the Middle East.
We know that Syria and North Korea are not the only rogue states developing, using, spreading dangerous weapons. Now is the time to address serious flaws in the Iran deal and counter Iran's destabilizing activities, including its development and proliferation of missiles and its support for terrorist proxies and militias.
Iran has repeatedly denied those accusations. Washington is wary of the growing complexity of the Syrian conflict, says analyst Karen von Hippel.
Not just because of U.S. and Turkey potentially facing each other off, but Russian troops are there, other Gulf country troops are there, the Israelis have been drawn in recently, and of course the Iranians are there. And so that really is a very dangerous theater where one little mistake could escalate in really frightening ways.
Such an escalation would likely draw in Syria's neighbors. Iraqi Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi said Islamic State, also known as Daesh, poses an enduring threat.
The task which is facing us is stabilization and reconstructing of the areas which has been occupied and damaged by Daesh. This is a huge task at a time when our oil income has dropped drastically.
The aim of this conference is to bring allies and adversaries together, to put dialogue before confrontation. From North Korea to the Middle East to the rekindling of Cold War rivalries, there is a palpable sense here that the world is becoming a more dangerous place. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News at the Munich Security Conference, Germany.
Well, in the U.S. state of Florida, high school students, where the gunman killed 17 people in a mass shooting on February the 14th, are vowing to not stay quiet in the face of continuing danger from guns. Emma Gonzalez has become the face of a student revolt against lax American gun laws after she condemned the politicians, including President Trump, who have accepted campaign contributions from the National Rifle Association. VOA's Zlatica Hoke has more.
Florida Governor Rick Scott attended a church service dedicated to the victims of the Wednesday mass shooting at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. While funerals of the victims were taking place this weekend, a major gun show opened in Florida's Miami area. 5,000 people were expected to attend the annual event, where visitors will be able to buy various arms, including the AR-15 rifle used in the school shooting in Parkland. Private sellers at such shows are not required to perform a background check on gun buyers. Meanwhile, in Washington, Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat from New York, said the White House budget proposal for 2019 would make it easier to buy a gun.
President Trump in his budget has actually cut the background check system, both for felons who shouldn't be getting a gun and for those who have mental illnesses who also shouldn't be getting a gun.
Trump has blamed the FBI for failing to follow up on the gunman's clues to prevent the Florida school shooting. Vice President Mike Pence said the administration will make school safety its top priority. But Florida school shooting survivors and other students across the country are frustrated with the lack of action from political leaders. Emma Gonzalez, one of the most outspoken, singled out those who collect donations from the National Rifle Association.
To every politician who is taking donations from the NRA, shame on you.
Gonzalez said Trump received $30 million from the powerful gun lobby and revoked his predecessor's rule that could have prevented thousands of people with mental disorders from being able to purchase a firearm.
Divided by the number of gunshot victims in the United States in the 1.5 months in 2018 alone, that comes out to being $5,800. Is that how much these people are worth to you, Trump?
Movements such as Me Next and Never Again are beginning to crop up around the country, aimed at resisting what is increasingly seen as the new normal for the current generation, the possibility to get killed at school. Activists seek to create a new normal in which there is shame for politicians accepting money from gun lobbyists. Protests are being planned in the coming months, and there is even a discussion on the possible merits of boycotting schools altogether until students' demands for sensible gun laws are met. Zlarica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time now for a short break. Still to come on Africa 54. The battle against elephant poachers goes high-tech. We'll be right back.
In Somalia, traders have shut down the Bakara market in Mogadishu, protesting the 5% sales tax imposed this month. In Sudan, dozens of opposition activists arrested last month for protesting rising food prices are released from the Kabar prison. In Guinea-Bissau, thousands of supporters of President Jose Mario Vaz, as well as some opposition groups, hold demonstrations to protest sanctions imposed by the West African bloc, ECOWAS. Gambian President Adama Barrow places a moratorium on the death penalty with intent to abolish it completely in his Independence Day speech in the capital, Banjul. Finally, in Kenya, 5 puppies are being trained to join a tracker dog unit to fight poaching in the Mara Triangle.
Welcome back to Africa 54. And here's what's trending. We are constantly being photographed everywhere we go. Facial recognition is on the rise, but so are hackers, and they have a new target: profile pictures that could unlock your personal information. Now, an Israeli company is getting on board with a global push to comply with new privacy standards. The startup, called DID, says it has developed a firewall to block facial recognition. DID's solution is a system of digital chemistry that subtly alters stored pictures enough to escape detection by facial recognition algorithms. Side by side, the changes are noticeable, but on its own, the altered picture appears normal. Next up, at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games, athletes and visitors can experience 2 futures of self-driving vehicles in 2 different Olympic venues by 2 different companies. South Korea's largest automaker and a local telecom firm have negotiated for months over who gets to claim the exclusive naming rights. In the end, they have agreed to call Hyundai Motors car autonomous vehicle, while KT's self-driving buses are named connected vehicles. At stake in their sponsorship battle was whether the world should define self-driving vehicles as a form of transportation or a new kind of an internet-connected device like smartphones. And finally, financial transactions are going high-tech in Venezuela. People from vegetable sellers to taxi drivers have registered to use mobile payment applications to attract customers who do not have enough paper money, which is in short supply due to soaring prices. The maximum daily amount Venezuelans can withdraw from cash machines is around 10,000 bolivars, around 4 cents at the black market exchange rate. Vipo, a Caracas-based payment app, saw a more than 30-fold increase in the number of people registering last year. City Wallet, born as a pilot project for online parking payments at a private university, was extended to several shopping centers. And that's what's trending today. Now, in the dense tropical rainforest of the Minkabe National Park in northern Gabon, conservationists are hoping a new weapon can help them win a war against elephant poaching. Viewers Mariama Diallo reports.
Conservationists in Gabon have started using the global positioning system real-time tracking devices on elephants to protect them against poachers.
We realized 20 years ago there was a growing pressure on elephants linked to the ivory trafficking of this species to Asian countries, for the most part Vietnam, Thailand and China.
Trying to put a tracker on a 5-ton animal is not an easy task. Each elephant is located and drugged temporarily so the GPS can be attached. The whole process takes about 10 minutes. Parfendong Ondo from Gabon's National Parks Agency explains how the system works.
The operations center here allows us to be in contact with field teams. At the same time, it allows us to track the movement of elephants with collars.
Just 10 years ago, experts say, Gabon's elephant population was one of the largest in Central Africa at 45,000.
It is estimated that between 10,000 and 15,000 elephants have been lost in the Minkabe Park in Gabon, which is a staggering number.
As the fight against poachers continues in Gabon and elsewhere, law enforcement agencies are trying to figure out who fatally stabbed a top investigator into the illegal ivory and rhino horn trade, who was recently found dead in his Nairobi home. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
And that's it for today. Have a good night.
Welcome to English in a Minute. A corner is basically an angle where 2 sides meet.
Boxed in a corner.
Let's find out why these two are talking about corners.
What's wrong? You look worried.
My friend Nico quit his job, had a baby, and bought a new house, all at the same time.
How's that going?
Not good. He's out of